Like most, probably everyone, when you hit 25, you start to ask yourself questions. Questions that never really came to the forefront of your mind before. But now, all of a sudden, they start to creep up. Closer and closer, it tugs at your brain. Nagging, waiting, wanting to be seen, noticed, heard. And it whispers, "What are you doing?" Initially, a simple question, but the more you think, the heavier it gets. Let me try to explain what I mean. I went to university because that's what I was told I should do, at least if I didn't want to be a failure. I got a master's degree in a field of study that, while I enjoyed, doesn't really reflect the reality of the industry. I moved to the other side of the planet to find work and reinvent myself, leaving behind family, friends, loved ones, all that I've ever known. And when I finally got into a firm, do you want to know what happened? My first day started 9 in the morning, and by the time I finished at 6 p.m., I realized this wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. I just felt so empty. Like, that's it? So now, I'm here, right this second, staring down the barrel of however many decades of life, doing something that I honestly don't find all that fulfilling. And you want to know what I think? Fuck that. I talk to my family and friends, and I'm told, stick it out. Give it a chance. It'll come right. But here's the thing. That nagging from before, it's still there. Only it's louder now. What are you doing? I've known 3 people from my generation that have just died. One at 16 from a brain tumor, one at 20 from an aneurysm, and one at 25 who just collapsed at work. And he was meant to be married that year. All nice, good people, and they're dead. And with that context in mind, I ask myself again, am I really living? Like, really living? Am I taking advantage of this insane ride that is life to the fullest? I sat with that for a while, and after I finished my first week at work, I got a call from my parents. My dad was going to have heart surgery because 3 of his arteries were clogged. And I was told he's probably going to make it, but there's a chance he might not. And that just pulled me down into a dark, dark place. I just felt so heavy and on edge all of the time. And the worst part was, there was nothing I could do to help. I was just about as far away from my family as humanly possible, and there was nothing I could do. So I did what most people would do in my situation. I got depressed. I drank more than I probably should, cried more than I would have liked, and listened to my sad white girl coming of age music on repeat. And each day I would show up to work in a job I didn't particularly find fulfilling, and I would pretend I was okay. People would ask me, "How are you going?" And I'd always just say back, "Not bad, not too bad." But the whole time, I just wanted to fucking cry. So, coming back to my earlier question of, am I really living? Simply put, right now, the answer is no. This went on for about a month. He had a successful operation, and I finally felt like I could move again. Unfortunately, life has a sense of humour, and sometimes it is so very, very dark. Just a few weeks after the first operation, I had another call from my brother, and he was calling to tell me that my dad was back in hospital because his own lungs were drowning him from fluid buildup, and the weight was back again. And finally, 3 months after the start of it all, we got an all clear. I felt so drained by the end of it that I just had nothing more to give. And, while this was going on, I'd just constantly think back to a one-liner from Mike Posner, of all people. And it was, "The world does a really good job of convincing you you're not going to die." And it really, really does. But one way or another, it is inevitable. Yet we always seem to be able to convince ourselves and each other that we have more time, that it isn't a finite resource. And I started to think, I know I'm not doing what I want to do. So, what are the things that I do want to do? How do I live? Unfortunately, I wasn't struck with some God-given revelation on the truth of our place in the universe. Instead, I got to work. I started brainstorming, writing things down, exploring different ideas, coming up with half-baked business plans, career changes, thoughts of just giving up and moving back home. But I kept coming back to one idea. I have this hunch that the most human act one can undertake is to create. Whether it's writing, running a business, making art, or building something. And I realized that for the first time in my life, I have the agency to create something for myself and the desire to do so. And the nagging was back again. But this time the words weren't the same. Instead, all I would hear was, "Why not?" And from that, an idea sprang to mind. A project, if you will. A story. A world. What is this extraordinary use of free will, you ask? Well, I'm going to make a manga. I'm going to document the whole thing, and you're going to follow along with me on my journey. I wish I could say that I was confident in my new direction, that it will be all that I've been looking for, everything I've imagined, everything I've ever wanted. But the truth is, I still don't know what I want, and I don't know if I ever will. But I do know what I don't want, and sometimes that's enough. Unfortunately, if I was going to make this work, it's not as simple as just sitting down at a table and drawing. I've been doing that for a while now, and while I think my analog skills are decent, there's no way to self-distribute it. There's no way to organically grow a platform. It's incredibly labor-intensive, hard to edit, quite unlike digital platforms, which is a problem, especially for what I have in mind, because I actually don't know how to draw digitally, even though it's clearly the better option for what I want to achieve. So I had to brainstorm. I find often when it comes to art, or just being creative in general, a trap that so many people fall into is constantly trying to learn before starting. The honest reality is, you'll probably never live up to your standards, especially at the start. No. What I needed was just to do, to build momentum, learn on the job, and to accept that I won't like it at first. But that's okay, because even if I start poorly, so fucking what? My very first paycheck immediately went towards getting out. I brought a drawing tablet, a Canva 12, quite possibly the cheapest setup you could get. $15 fucking dollars. No shot. There's nothing fancy, but it was a start. And it worked. I could plug my tablet in, I could draw, but there were some issues. My laptop was loud, old, and quite frankly at this point, probably a fire hazard. I tried cleaning the fans, but unfortunately I knew nothing about computer maintenance. It was likely too little, too late. The fans would hum like they were mad at me, and the base of a laptop is still hot to touch. And sometimes things are just not worth trying to make work, especially for the return you get. Sometimes you just have to take a loss on the chin, and sometimes you just have to give up on trying to brute force a solution with the wrong tool. So, with my second paycheck, I gave in and bought a new laptop. The good news is, I can finally start drawing, right? Wrong. I mentioned there were some other roadblocks earlier. I think they're actually just a collection of quite small things in their own way, but when you add them all together, it actually presents quite a huge problem. For one, what software? I've never painted digitally, not like this, and I don't even know where to start. How do I transfer my analog skills into digital and make an outcome that actually achieves my goals? I asked around, watched a couple videos, and was looking at a few options. Just exploring all those decisions took days. And this seems to be a common theme for me, especially when I try to start something new. I'm sure you all experience it as well. Decision paralysis. Art software and software in general is so powerful these days that it can do almost anything. And it can do it faster and cleaner than a human could ever hope. But here's the rub. Learning the skills where you can get to that stage takes years of time and energy I don't have, especially if you're teaching yourself. And the other side of it is, you only ever really end up using about 10% of these tools, and the rest is almost just niche use case bloatware that makes it harder to learn the software. All that being said and done, I did what anyone else would do, and I looked at the first recommended free option. Affinity. I started off with some really basic things. Learning the settings to best replicate analog brushstrokes. It's not perfect. You can't rotate the pen and get a different stroke weight like you would in the real world. Or maybe you can, but you definitely can't with my setup. But it still works. And another thing I found to be quite frustrating was the way grouping worked. Because it's a vector-based software, each time I tried to do a collection of strokes, it would just spiral into this mess of vectors, and it would just be so irritating to edit later. Plus the sheer magnitude of the UI was just overwhelming and just overstimulating. I then discovered Leonardo. The UI was so clean and simple. It was so much more intuitive, and I fell in love right away. It just let me draw, which is all I wanted. Plus, because it's a raster-based software, it lets me work in layers and organize them well, with far easier means of editing it in post. And I loved it. It was fun to use, there was no anxiety, and the infinite page, my god, game-changing. There's such a noticeable difference between being confined to an arbitrary canvas and just having the freedom to not worry about how you move things around. So now, I can finally draw. Except, it's not that easy. It's never that easy. It won't ever be that easy. Even if I think it's going to be that easy, and I'm going to keep trying, but it's not going to be that easy. Unfortunately, just because I managed to get a software I like, doesn't mean I can do the same things I can do on pen and paper. Sometimes in life, all you need to do is put in the time and practice. So in this mini training arc, I had 2 goals. Focusing on getting the character drawing right. I did this by coming up with a simple layer scheme, testing some references from my own art, and a couple practice sessions using references that I found online. You'll have seen a bunch of B-roll playing in the background. This was some of my excerpts of my explorations. It may seem short, but it's hours upon hours of work. Finally, I started to explore backgrounds. This is still largely unresolved, but I have an idea of how to really take advantage of it. But it's something we'll just have to come back to. And at this point, I realized I'd actually made quite a bit of progress towards my goals. It's been months since I started this, and I knew just the way to end the first leg of my journey. I had a go at making my first cover title. By now, you're probably wondering, why go through all this effort? You don't need to go this deep. You just want to make a manga. I'm sure you've seen plenty of videos of people making them up in a week or so for a competition, or maybe over a course of a month. Maybe you didn't fully understand. Maybe you didn't quite hear what I said. I want to make a manga. That means everything it entails. I have a story I want to tell, a world and characters I want to explore. I don't know how long it will take. I don't know how many chapters it'll be. There will absolutely be side quests. But this is my promise to you. I will see this through, and I'll do the story justice. What I will create will not be perfect, but perfection is eternally the enemy of the good, and ultimately, it doesn't matter. Welcome to Folly. I'll have a part 2 coming soon. Fuck, it sounds so dumb. Feels weird saying shit like this, but yeah, no. Like and subscribe to stay up to date, and if you have any thoughts or criticisms, I'd love to hear them. I'll probably ignore most of them, because, I don't know, I assume most of it won't be constructive. Or if you just want to leave a hate comment, actually, like, just go for it, mate. Like, fucking live your life, I guess. It probably boosts engagement anyway. Food for thought. Anyway, that's kind of all I have to say. I'm just kind of fucking around with the microphone now, like Deadpool in a post-credit scene. Ka-chow.